Hello. What a treat to have you all. Oh, yes. I see the meeting language was changed to English. That's great to know. I would have been in serious trouble if it hadn't. Um, how fantastic to have you all here. You all know that you could never start a webinar at 11 o'clock exactly, or whatever time it is. You have to give it a minute for more people to come in and kind of build up the tension, like Oasis will as they wait to go on stage, for instance, assuming they make it to the gig, etc., etc. Right. Wow, we're off the rails already, aren't we? Let me just bring in this new joiner. It's that pinging noise constantly in the background that throws me off my gang. So remember, please, that this is more of a technical webinar. There is another webinar, more of a broader update about the project next week on Wednesday, I do believe it is. So no one is going to think any less of you if that number just drops down from 52 to 51 because you're like, oh, I didn't realize it was the technical one. Like we won't hold it against you. It's absolutely fine. We are going to get into the weeds of things here in a way that we won't with the wider, more general audience on I'm thrown because there's questions coming in already. Wow, that we won't next week. So yeah, we've got 20 minutes for questions later in the webinar, but we've got people in the crowd on our side who can read those questions in advance, possibly get you an answer, but we will be reading those questions out later. So yeah, indeed, put your questions into the chat, please. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Well, I believe I've covered off John Cooper there. Welcome and introductions. So I'm going to pass over to you now for an update on the previous webinar. I haven't really done a very good job of introductions, have I? Because I haven't even said who I am. So I'm Paul Chandler, who is the service owner for this project. And now I'm going to introduce John Cooper, who is our product owner, with a little update for us. John.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm John. I'm the product owner within the digital projects team at DFT. I was also product owner on previous phases of the work. So what have we been doing since the last webinars, which were about a month ago? I think the FAQ on the Transport Technology Forum website has been updated at least twice in the last month. This is following questions received in the last two webinars and also a few of the other ones we've received outside of those. We've also gone to a clearer and easier to follow format, hopefully, on the sequencing and numbering of the questions in the FAQ so that we can add in new ones under each category without disrupting the overall flow within the document. Also, during the last month, we have been steadily working to populate GitHub, and there has been some interest on the issues that other people have raised as well, and we've attempted to answer a few of the questions that have been raised. We are particularly targeted some of the technical questions that have been raised in the FAQ and things around like the types of provisions that are in the data model and a few other technical things. Also coming up, others we'll talk about later, we are going to address standardized definitions. And there was another one about different types of order And we have just posted an update on that, thanks to John Harrod Booth, addressing where we are going to do additional model updates, and others will talk about those coming up. Suffice to say that when we do anything technical associated with the documentation and the model and the data specification, we back it up with GitHub posts, and that is our preferred route for you to give us the technical feedback that we so much need on the project. We like to obviously address the concerns and questions that you as users have, and also for our own purposes, we have the imminent assessment of the project, and we need to show that we've been considering all the feedback from a variety of sources. The last one here is that in our last webinars, there was some discussion around georeferencing and questions about whether we'd spoken to the Geospatial Commission, which is part of the Cabinet Office. We went away and set up a meeting with them, which we've had in the last couple of weeks, and it was very productive. The good news is that they haven't raised any what we call red flags about anything that we're doing on the project, and moreover, they have agreed that the approach we are using in most of the areas is fine by them. They aren't being too prescriptive on the types of work that we are doing. That is not to say that any of the elements that we have within the project won't change in the future. We remain fully agile and committed to adapting to at all times to the best possible path. So that is a quick update on where we've been since the previous webinar, and I'll hand back to Paul.
Thank you, John. Excellent little update there. Lovely to see the questions coming in. And it's my great privilege now to hand over to Dr. Gareth Tilley. Gareth, who are you? Where are you from? And what is it you want to tell us?
Thanks, Paul. So my name's Gareth Tilley, and I work for PA Consulting with the delivery partner for D-TRO Private Beta, and my role is Stakeholder Engagement Manager. I'm sure lots of you guys know that already from all these different webinars we've done previously. What I wanted to do today was just run through the timeline for Private Beta, but with the focus on the onboarding process effectively. The way we're envisaging it is it's a two-stage approach. So what we've got is what we're calling an integration environment. That's effectively the test environment. And that will enable publishers of TROs and consumers of TROs to test their APIs against the service. It's purely a test environment, and that's its function. And the publishers we see initially onboarding into that integration environment are TRAs who do their own D-TROs internally, and they've got their in-house solutions, and the digital solution providers as well. So that's the publisher side, and then we've got the data consumers as well. That's the first stage, onboarding to that testing environment to check that all the functionality that you'd expect is there in terms of the service. And then following that, there's going to be the second stage, and that's onboarding to the live environment, and that's the kind of real deal, the private beta service. And in terms of the timelines, we're looking to start providing access to the integration environment next week. So that's week commencing the 9th. And then we're looking to onboard to the live environment week commencing the 23rd. We've got our list for who we feel is correct from our discussions with yourselves. We've done, as you know, quite a lot of surveying for who's going to be in that initial onboarding to the integration environment. If you don't hear from us next week, do reach out if you feel that you are signed up to private beta and would be expecting an invite to the integration environment. So just to repeat, that's TRAs, so that's mainly local authorities who have their own in-house solution, and digital solution providers on the publisher side, and data consumers as well. The whole process, you'll be pleased to hear, is going to be managed by customer services officers. So that's myself and John Cooper as well. We're going to be leading that. So if there are any issues, yeah, please do reach out to us. So a little bit more about the integration environment. So it is a clone of the production environment. It's got that full functionality. As I say, it's very much a test environment. The CSO, so myself and John, will also be able to go into that environment and see what's been uploaded and look at the test data which is being used. It is a sandbox environment. So in terms of when you're uploading test D-TROs, you won't be required at this stage to link any D-TRO to a traffic regulation authority. It's purely in the integration environment. You won't need to do that. You will, however, need to do that in the live service. As I say, we're looking to do that onboarding commencing next week effectively. And the process says you'll be emailed by the CSO, so by myself or John, the associated onboarding documentation and the URL required to access that, the start of the onboarding process. A little bit about the onboarding process. So it's not too complicated, but there is a bit of interchange between yourself, your organisation, and the CSO. So there's a bit of toing and froing between sending different information and different authorizations, but effectively it's a 4-step process. Initially, as I say, you'll be emailed the URL and the onboarding documentation by myself or John as CSO. You will then have the details of how to create an account in the developer portal in the Apogee application. We're using that off-the-shelf product from Google to manage that. That will create the application for your organization in the integration environment. That gives you some details around app ID, application name, which you then need to send back to us as the CSAs for verification, because we're wanting to obviously make sure that all the organizations are as we would expect. So we've got a step there just to give us that sign off. And then following that, you'll receive your API keys and secret, and that will enable you to use the D-TRO platform in anger. So that's stage 1, that's the integration environment, and then just a kind of headlines around stage 2, private beta. As I say, we're looking to commence that week commencing the 23rd of September. It's going to be the live environment, so what goes in will be real data. So please, if you want to use any test data or any testing, use the integration environment. That's what it's there for. That will require any D-TRO in that. Obviously, unsurprisingly, will have to be linked to a TRA. It will be a very similar onboarding process through the Apogee portal, effectively. So hopefully by then, we'll have done that kind of testing of the onboarding in the integration phase, and hopefully that'll be a slick process, and any lessons learned we would have been able to wrap into our documentation and anything else we need to. Paul, that was all I wanted to say around the onboarding process, so I'll hand back to you now.
Thank you so much, Gareth. Yeah, very much that 2-stage process, let's get people into that integration environment and, suss everything out. And then, yeah, we will be moving over to getting that private beta fully up and running in the very near future. Well, thank you. From one doctor to another, we move now from Gareth to John Harrod Booth. Who are you, and what would you like to tell us, sir? Someone tell him he's on mute. Come on.
I did press the mute button, it just didn't do anything. Good morning, I'm John Harrod Booth, talking to you from Somerset. I'm an independent consultant supporting DFT on the data modeling side of this. And my job today is to tell you about some updates that we're going to do to the data specification. I'm going to cover off 3 topics. So there's the update to the data specification itself, discussing on sample JSON files, and a bit of intro in terms of standard terms and definitions. Next slide, please. We've received plenty of comments. I'll flag particularly AppyWay, but there's comments come in from others, and that's a really useful exercise. Most of the comments that have come from Appy are really matters of consistency between various bits of documentation, be that the data model, the schema, or the data model user guide. And so that's been a really helpful exercise in terms of us being able to iron some of those issues out. So the proposal is that next week we will issue a slightly revised version, an up version of the data model and its specification. And that's really, I suppose you could call that a bug fix. That's really addressing those minor problems, minor issues. We do foresee later within private beta, with the timing to be defined, a further update, and I'll cover that off in a moment. Next slide, please. So we've been capturing all of the comments that have come in. As you'd expect, we've got a tracker that's keeping hold of all of those, and we look at triaging them, and have basically cut them into 3 different buckets, which is, do we address them within this latest release, primarily bugs, these sorts of things? Do we try and address them in the later release to come later in private beta? Or are there points where essentially there's no change? It may be a point of clarification, maybe a direct response back to who's raised the issue, maybe an improvement in the documentation. So we're dealing with that, and we're keeping track of all of those as we move through the process. Next slide, please. For this version of the specification, so there was a comment raised by his GitHub name is Pavel from Elgin, so I assume it's Pavel, that was talking about the sort of regulations that we support for temporary TROs, and the fact that the regulation list at the moment didn't really cover many of those things. So trying to be as reactive as possible, we've done a triaging of that, and we've extended the regulation list to cover many of those things where they were not already covered. So that's probably the most significant change, but it's just an extension to one of the existing lists. But that shows that we're trying to be responsive to user needs and demands. Absolutely, please feel free to comment. There's a GitHub issue on this topic. If you have an alternate viewpoint, or you think there should be more things in that list, please let us know, and we will try and address them appropriately. We are also looking at, and I'll diverge slightly on the topic, and I can see Tim Hernan's comments coming in. We are looking at the topic of the geospatial referencing. It's not been addressed in this update because it would be quite a significant change, but we are looking at that, and we can discuss that later. In terms of, there's been 2 or 3 requests for sample files, and we're trying to respond to that. So when we release the documentation, we will also release an initial set of sample files. Those are from what we've been using for internal testing. So they're primarily different forms of TRO that are at different stages of the reporting process. But we are also developing further examples that we'll post once those are available. Next slide, please. Probably a bit of a new topic, and those who've been around this discussion going back over the past few years will recognise this and say, oh yeah, that sounds like a sensible thing to do. We of course have a vocabulary within the data model which covers off things like different types of regulation, different types of vehicles, these sorts of things. And we've tried over time, and I'll put a big hand up to Steve Thompson, who's done a huge amount of the background work on this, to create a list of all of the lists that appear in the data model, and then try to provide definitions against each of the items that exist. And we're just about to release that Excel spreadsheet that covers all of the terms and definitions in the data model, and is really inviting your comment on those. And I'll just give you an example on the next slide when I come to it in a moment. But so we'll put up the spreadsheet, we'll put up some notes that explain how it's been put together and how you should read it. But very, very strongly, DFT want your input and views on this. It's important. Why is it important? In an ideal world, if we were dealing with a completely greenfield site, which we're clearly not, we would start off by saying, well, here are a standard set of definitions for different types of vehicle and different types of regulation and what have you, and urge the local authorities to use those standard definitions. We're not in that space, but obviously it helps, and it will help consumption of the data in the future if we can start to expose those standard definitions and encourage local authorities to comment on them, take them on board, hopefully use them. I don't know, as a technician, I don't know whether at some point in the distant future, whether DFT might take a more strident position and say, well, you really have to use these terms and definitions. But for the moment, it's really just trying to improve the knowledge base that we've got, take on board your comments, and try to get it as right as possible. Next slide, please. So just to give you an illustration, this is one of the more interesting tables, which covers off vehicle type. And you can see in column D a bunch of short names which actually appear in the data model. It's not very obvious on this slide, but some of them are bolded and some of them are not. The ones that are bold exist in the data model. And the ones that are not are actually proposals that have come from Steve Thompson, who said, perhaps you think you should have in the data model this sort of term. And then Steve has gone through the process of actually going off and finding the legal definitions, column E, and where they come from, so TRSGD, for example, and an expectation that we should really be able to develop that set of definitions and their legal sources, and perhaps where there are needs which don't exist, then that's going to be fed back in to the TRSGD team to say, well, should there be legal definitions created in the future? It's very developmental. It should be viewed as extremely developmental, and I'm sure I hope it'll draw a lot of comment, but that's certainly the intention. So DFT are going to put this out there via the GitHub resource, invite you to comment back on that. We'll have to try and figure out what the best way to comment, because you commenting back, sending back Excel spreadsheets is going to be rather difficult. So we'll have to find another way to do it. But you are cordially invited to look at this and consume it and comment back as you see appropriate. And I think that's me for the moment.
Thank you, John Harrod Booth. Well, that brings us to the Q&A, gang. Feel free to carry on getting your questions in relation to everything that you've heard. But for now, let's dive into the chat. And I guess I'm just going to throw various people on the panel under the bus and just throw these questions over to them. So brace yourselves, gang. Do you have the full list of all traffic regulation authorities participating in beta? Is this definitive? So yes, we do have the list. Is it definitive? No, because, you know, we're pretty open. If someone wants to rock up halfway through and be like, oh, you know, can we get involved? Then that's not a huge problem. We may have rolled over some people who were involved in earlier stages, like the pilot stage, without explicitly saying to them, you know, do you want to be involved in the beta? So if we've done that at all, then feel free to let us know on that score. So yeah, I'm going to throw over to John Cooper to see if he's happy to share the list, or you know, how we want to do it.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, we do. We wrote out to the DRAs and digital solution providers who had identified as being up for being included in private beta. There was then a positive opt-in for them to complete to confirm that they would like to be in beta. The last time we checked that list, there was about 26, 27 that had signed up. Looking at the list in the last few days, we can see that there aren't so many data consumers on that list. The data consumers should not really fret. We will be onboarding you too, but really until there is some useful information that has been submitted in, there isn't so much for data consumers to see there. We would still be up for onboarding you guys in integration phase and then full private beta phase. Yes, and I'm sure we can publish a list of the participating authorities. We would probably do that on GitHub, I want to say, for that.
Yeah, I would say so. Does someone out there want to answer the JSON example of TTRO's question?
Yeah, I can start just while others are mobilizing. Yeah, we did. We have had the there was a request for not examples of TTROs, but for just general examples, and we are addressing that in with some new examples that are going to be published in line with the bug fix data specification that GHB has talked about. And then we have seen the separate requests for different subtypes of TTROs, and we do intend to be able to publish additional examples. We've talked about the ways of doing this, right down to highly simplified ways where we have a generic street and can attribute different types of temporary closure on them. Bear with us. We will try to populate with as many useful types of orders as we can. We see your wishes on the GitHub, and that will be where we would publish the examples.
Thanks, John. I'm going to get into the topic of the data model and the spec and try and you're right, John. You look confused. Sorry, no, you threw me off. Right, I will raise this whole topic and let's see if we can tease out some stuff on this call. It's good to have everyone or a lot of the people involved here, I think. So has there been any movement on the possibility of extending the data spec to include GeoJSON again, as was included originally? Talking to the wrong person there, because I didn't know that we'd rolled anything back, but I'm going to throw over to JHB and co soon. You were going to speak to the Geospatial Commission on this interoperability. We did speak to the Geospatial Commission last week, I think it was, as well as earlier in August, but they're not like the police of this or anything, you know. They're not like putting down guidelines particularly or telling us we're doing it wrong. So yes, we had a call with them, but they didn't raise any red flags. But you know, I don't mean it like this, but I would kind of say, let's forget the Geospatial Commission, guys, and let's look at this project and what it is we want to do, what the benefits of making the change are, what the, you know, downriver implications of it are. You know, if this is what people want and there's enough people that want it to make it worthwhile and there's a definitive way of doing it, you know, we don't have any huge issue with doing it. So let's just go down here. We've heard from a number of authorities who already maintain their TROs digitally in a GIS and would prefer to supply data in existing standard geospatial data format. Because of the insistence on JSON, they can't. Can we please extend the spec? And then, why restrict us to a proprietary non-spatial data format? So I'm slightly out of my depth here. I'm going to throw over now to John Harrod Booth for any comments on this. Do you want to give this a stab, John?
Very happy to give it a stab. Yeah, so the discussion with, as Paul said, the Geospatial Commission was helpful and productive. That meeting included representation from the NUAR project, so it was very interesting to see their approach as well, which is very different, if I can use a phrase like that. The discussion point is taken well, and I'm discussing with DFT colleagues and PA colleagues. We've been chewing this over a lot. We haven't yet come to a resolved position on it, but there's certainly a number of discussions going on about the possibility of extending to use different formats or change formats or slightly different ways of doing things. All of those discussions are ongoing, and please take it that we are attempting to resolve this as fast as we practically can. There's a certain limited capacity in the team overall. So we are taking the discussion on board. I'm certainly not, creating any particular blocker to using GeoJSON as an approach. It was in an earlier version of the specification. I think I laid out last time some of the constraints that exist. So we can discuss it at multiple different levels about the encoding format and the coordinate referencing systems that are used and the like. Some of those assumptions that we've got were reinforced by the discussion with the Geospatial Commission. It's interesting, their approach, because clearly there's various bits of government guidance that exist, some of which they choose to ignore, which, considering some of them are effectively written by the same people as are in the Geospatial Commission, is rather interesting. So we're working on it. I think it would be very helpful, and I'm sure we will reach out to Tim and others to work through this issue and try to get it resolved as fast as possible. At the same time, we're caught in a bit of a conundrum, which is that we want, of course, to get you a beta system up and working, and we go between the viewpoint that says, well, we could update the specification next week and let you guys catch up as fast as possible, and then we could update it in 2 weeks' time and let you guys catch up as fast as possible. We've already had comment from some authorities saying, aren't you going to issue one specification that never changes? So we're caught in that space as well. So it is a matter that we are looking at with as much energy as we can put on this topic at the moment, and we will try to resolve it as fast as possible. And it is pretty likely that we will reach out to some of you and say, can we have a further discussion around this? Do John or Paul, any further comments?
I would say that if there are other local authorities that feel the same way, please send them towards us so we can kind of, see the scale of the problem. And if there are, a decent, even quite a small number, but of a few local authorities that feel this way, and work in a similar fashion, and have the same kind of format, that's really helpful for us, and we would definitely be more than happy to talk to you guys. Not a problem at all. One slight concern is that we listen to a couple of authorities and make some changes, and then a couple more authorities pop up and go, oh, we do it in a slightly different way to this. Can you do it like that? And then we can't keep making changes. But if there's one consistent way of doing it that people want, then yeah, that's more than possible. Thank you, John. Right. I think I might be needing you here again, actually, John. I've written traffic orders, and I'm surprised by this question. I guess in Westminster there weren't a lot of speed restrictions going on, with the vast majority of it being 30 miles an hour. So that might explain my ignorance. So on temporary TROs, would we like one restriction per provision or multiple restrictions shared per provision? So you could have a road closure and a speed restriction, for instance. How do we want that done?
One restriction per provision.
Good. Right. Okay. Right. Is there a clear definition of what TRO info will be published as open data for innovators to use? And if yes, what's the timing for publishing? Who might want to take this? Well, John's gone off camera, so not him. John Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, are we talking about the publishing API, what is published into the service, or what is formats in which it's what's available if we extract it?
We're talking open data. And if we think about Street Manager, for instance, there's all kinds of stuff around fixed penalty notices that aren't in the open data at all. There's free text descriptions of work and the location which aren't in the open data. So what this person's saying, I think, is everything that we submit going to be part of this open data feed, or will it be sort of a cut down version?
Everything that is submitted will be part of the open data feed, but everything that is submitted is not all of what is in the TRO. All of what is in the TRO is in the legal version of the TRO that is made by the council, and it contains all the articles and preambles and all the wordy text that is in a written TRO. The TRO, the digital TRO, the D-TRO, that is sent to the D-TRO service is a cut down version of that set of information. But all of what is sent in will then be able to be extracted out, and the definition of what is sent in is contained in the data specification, which details all the elements of what is required. And then the SLIM example, if we're still calling it SLIM, I'm not sure we are, but the example file that is there at the moment shows the like a minimum set of information that is required in order to constitute the digital TRO. And we'll be augmenting those with some new examples which describe a few different types of orders. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we'll try and add in extra example files as well to increase the range of what we offer.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I mean, just to go back to Street Manager for a second, the difference between this service and that service is that on the Street Manager side, you have highway authorities and works promoters talking to each other the whole time in the service, and that's kind of, you know, a big part of the point of it. Whereas with D-TRO, what you have is, you know, submitting these orders for the purpose of publishing them. You know, so we are looking to publish everything that we get, basically. If you've got any concerns around that, or that wasn't what you were expecting, Simon, do feel free to drop in touch and say, oh, you know, I was surprised to hear that X field was going to be made public, or whatever it might be. Right, okay. When are we expecting you to comment on the standard terms and conditions? How will we be alerted? And I'm pleased to see John Harrod Booth come on camera. But let's shout out, John, the instigator or the main driver behind this standard terms and conditions piece of work.
Absolutely, as I did before. So big thanks goes out to Steve Thompson, who was the guy who originally put most of the spreadsheet together. I guess the quick answer to that question, Eliza, is, are you subscribed for notifications on the GitHub? Because once we put that issue up on the GitHub, then you would receive that notification. If not, then might be a good idea to do so. I don't know whether, well, John Cooper is sending out fairly regular emails to various groups of people, and I'm sure we can include it in one of those. But the content that I showed you will be published up on the GitHub resource within the next week. In terms of when would we like comments, I suspect from discussions with people who are much more expert than I am, the Steve Thompsons of this world, Simon Morgan and others, I suspect this might be a very long-running discussion, and initially will be there as background guidance material, and so there's no hard deadline in terms of trying to get comments in. We expect it to be an ongoing process, but we will keep nudging and encouraging people to comment upon it, because I hope we should be able to reach a certain degree of convergence reasonably quickly. There may be one or two points which are longer term debates. So the information will be there within the next week. We will try to indicate the best way to comment back, and we invite people to do so. I guess the next one's probably also for me.
Do you want to add anything, John Cooper?
Yeah, I'll just add to, I think the next regular comms will be after the main webinar next Wednesday, where we'll do a wash up. We'll circulate the, we'll get the videos posted, and we'll say about stuff that's been published to GitHub. But yeah, as John says, the best way to find out about GitHub is to get on the notifications, because whenever anything is posted to code or an issue is posted or commented on, you can receive an immediate ping on that, and then go in and as a signed in user and add to the discussion. So that's the best route. We won't routinely be emailing people out about what's going in on GitHub on a day-to-day basis. So.
Thanks, John. And thanks, Eliza. If we do have an hour-long meeting talking about the definition of what a taxi is, we'll be sure to invite you. Sadly, I can't make it. Right, Lawrence, is there an intention to link any spatial information with OS data or the NSG?
Happy to answer that. So in the data model, there is a link across to USRNs, so part of the NSG. So the expectation of the draft secondary legislation that is in preparation is that where USRNs exist, then the expectation is, if you have a TRO and a provision, that you then provide the linked USRN. That can't be universally the case, because you may have TROs that relate to other byways, and not all authorities have all their byways within the NSG. So there may be some byways which don't have USRNs, but in principle, yes.
Thanks, John. Now, guys, and Lokesh, feel free to note this at least, but I didn't see any API documentation in terms of how to list and filter the data. As consumers, it's essential to be able to take TROs from a particular date. Not sure if anyone wants to come in and answer this one. I feel like we can do that. It's just that we need to be clearer with our documentation, maybe. Lokesh.
To be fair, I think you've answered it there. So it's on the list, and it's something we can take back to the dev team.
Yeah, we will get that sorted out, Lawrence. Thank you very much for that one. For temporary traffic orders, does the DFT have an interest in the expiry date of a TTRO order? Well, that's a controversial topic, isn't it? No, we need to know when the order is due to end, and when the actual road closure itself is. Different organisations write their traffic orders in different ways. So the regulations might have some thoughts on this as well. I think the regulations will make that clear. Life will probably be easier for us, gang, when the consultation goes out and you can see exactly what's being asked for. But John Harrod Booth.
I think you've already answered the way I was going to answer, Paul. So the answer to the question is, in principle, both, but obviously that's subject to the regulations and then the consultation. So, yes.
Thank you, John. Well, I think a TTRO is valid for 18 months. How would we re-advertise? It's only valid for 18 months if you write it to be valid for 18 months, to be fair. And again, let's see what the consultation brings us in terms of. I'm not dropping a wink here that there's going to be some change in advertising, but you know, we will sort all that out. How will local exemptions be included for publishing? For instance, we exempt vehicles delivering perishable goods, lovely stuff, from some of our loading and stopping restrictions, so as not to severely impact food delivery. Wow, I feel like you and Simon Morgan would get on fantastically well. John Harrod Booth.
I absolutely love this comment. So that beautifully synchronizes into the please comment on the standard terms and definitions. So you'll find a various lists in that spreadsheet that cover off vehicle types and vehicle usage. Yeah, I don't think we've got that one in the list at the moment. So bring them on, I say.
Do we have, John, the one about like boat carrying vehicles on the coast? Is that a thing?
It is in Pool, yes.
Yeah. So and that's on our list.
I don't think it's there at the moment, but I'm sure somebody from Pool would like to seek to add it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we're happy to look at all these weird and wonderful scenarios, and shout out to you for looking out for perishable goods. Don't get me started on the quality of onions going downhill. Didn't think I'd get that into a webinar. Right. I think every question has been answered, and our running order says that we're going to have Gareth Tilley give us something called further information. Gareth, over to you.
Thanks, Paul. I just wanted to highlight kind of next activities in terms of the engagement programme. We've got, as it's been mentioned a few times now, we've got the webinar next week on the 11th, on Wednesday, and that's at 3 o'clock. We've got a technical webinar, the next one of these, we're looking to schedule for the 10th of October. In the meantime, that doesn't preclude people raising issues on GitHub. In addition, like the team will be at Highways UK, that's on the 16th of October, and we'll also be at the TTF Autumn Conference as well. As part of Private Beta, we are looking to set up engagement sessions to get people's feedback, and we're looking to potentially do some webinars, seminars, and workshops and one-to-one sessions. And I think we would like, we're looking to just get a bit of feedback from people on what the appetite is for doing kind of different formats effectively. So we'll do that. And then just kind of further information, we've got the Transport Technology Forum website. That's got the FAQ, our regular announcements and our mailing list. We've got the mailbox, so dtro@dft.gov.uk. And then we've got the YouTube playlist as well. That was what I was going to cover, Paul. JC, I don't know if there's anything else you want to pick up on engagement.
I guess we didn't get around to it in the end, but we were perhaps be interested in gauging the enthusiasm for in-person events in the north and the south. We were thinking of events where we actually had a physical presence in London and Leeds, probably as the two suitable cities to go and host something. We could possibly put that in a quick survey or something just to gauge whether it's going to be worth our while to proceed with that. because of the all the logistics involved in organising a actual in-person event. We will continue to have the webinars and the one-to-ones and things, but it is nice now and again to actually meet people in person and to be there for something a bit more substantial.
You say Leeds, John Cooper, but it turns out it's impossible basically to book the DFT meeting space in Leeds. Very competitive. I think it's more than DFT actually. But yeah, if there is appetite for that, we will sort that out. Wow. Fantastic stuff. Worth saying that YouTube channel is just the Street Manager YouTube channel, which we've now added into the D-TRO stuff. We've already got hundreds of subscribers, thousands of views. Do like and subscribe. And I think that's pretty much everything. What a delightfully timed webinar. Normally I go through the terror of we're not going to have enough material, it's going to end after 20 minutes, and then it switches over to, oh, we're going to run over. But neither of those things have really happened today. We've timed it really nicely. John, Gareth, are you anything else to add?
Nothing from me, thanks, Paul.
No, I think we've covered off things. We will, of course, wrap up the chat, look at questions, see whether or not this is a question we've already answered. If there are new questions, we'll add them into the FAQ under our usual kind of cycle, probably lumped together with questions that will come in on the main webinar next week to be updated as soon as possible thereafter.
Thanks, John. Yeah, and I'm particularly keen to nail the whole thing around the spec, and are we going to make changes to it to help out some of those local easy for me to say, local authorities. Right, cheers all. Have a great rest of the day, and maybe see some of you on the webinar next week. Take care of yourselves.